Welcome back to Eyes on Israel. I am here in the Israel 365 studios just outside of Jerusalem. And joining me in the studio today is Dr. Tricia Miller. Dr. Tricia Miller works for the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis, otherwise known as CAMERA. They've been around for over 40 years, and as their name implies, they monitor accuracy in the reporting on events in the Middle East, specifically relating to Israel, because Israel is victim of so many lies and so much misrepresentation. As you know, if you are part of the audience of this show, we deal with lies about Israel every single week. And Tricia Miller's specific job in CAMERA is monitoring Christian media. Tricia is also an ordained pastor, so she's well qualified to understand some of the underpinnings of this misinformation in Christian media, and she's here visiting Israel at this time. Thank you so much for visiting Israel, Dr. Miller, at this time during a war, and thank you for being in our studio.
Thank you, Rabbi Pesach, and I'm very glad to be here. Very happy to be in Israel.
You monitor Christian media, and you've been monitoring it for years, and especially since October 7th and this war, there's so much misinformation about Israel. Let's focus for the education of our viewers. Let's focus on the main lies that you're encountering. What are the key, most prominent or most problematic lies that are specific to Christian media that relate to this war?
All right. The war has exaggerated or amplified what has been going on historically in the Christian world. First, the good news. There are millions and millions of evangelical Christians around the world who support Israel. And it's because they read the Bible. They know what the Bible says about God's plan for the Jewish people and for the nation of Israel. The bad news is that there is also a movement that is opposing that. And it's based in bad theology, which we can talk about if you want to, but it is amplified since the beginning of the war because of the mainstream media and because of the efforts of the enemies of Israel in the Christian world to make Israel look like the bad guy here. Israel is demonized more than ever because Israel has had to go into Gaza to try to prevent Hamas from having the ability to do again what they did on October 7th.
So give me an example of a lie that Christians are being told or that is becoming popular in the Christian media.
A popular lie is the Jews are bloodthirsty people, that they are the aggressors, that they and this is a lie as old as the book of Esther, based on the Christian interpretation of Esther, that the Jews like to kill people, so this is nothing new. But now, because of the war, Israel is being portrayed as the aggressor, and everything is being forgotten about what happened on October 7th. It's as if Israel wants to go kill civilians. So a specific lie is that the civilians are being targeted by Israel. Civilians are dying. Yes, civilians are dying because civilians die in war. But in this war in particular, civilians are being used by Hamas as civilian shields. And Israel, on the other hand, is doing everything they can to protect civilian lives. But the lie that is being propaganda, and it's a blood libel. For centuries and centuries and centuries, there's been blood libels. But that's what's being told now, is that Israel is killing civilians purposefully.
Yeah, and we've talked about that on this show, about the ratio of civilian deaths to combatant deaths that is actually lower than any other urban combat situation. We've talked about that on this show. You talked about bad theology. Could you give me an example of a particular point that relates directly to the Israel-Arab conflict, the conflict right now with the Palestinian Arabs, that would be built on bad Christian theology?
Okay, well, there's a theology that's been in the church since pretty much the end of the first century. And that's called replacement theology. That's what we call it now. It wasn't referred to that historically. But the age-old belief is that Christians in the church have replaced Jews in Israel and the purposes of God. So fast forward to now, and the reason Israel is demonized and is considered illegitimate is that the Jews don't belong here now. Because if they've been replaced in the purposes of God by the church, by Christians, the Jews have no right to this land here and now. The lie is told that the Jews who are here now are not descended, they're not related to the ancient Israelites. That's false, it's a lie. And then in direct application to this war, it just gets magnified, because what right do these Jews have to be trying to eliminate Hamas terrorists who did what they did on October 7th?
You know, Tricia, this what you just said about how there are many Christians who believe that the Jews of today are not the same as the Jews of the Bible. I did a segment on that on my show not long ago. I've encountered this myself as a Jew, and one thing that a lot of Christians don't realize is that the Jewish people have an unbroken chain of tradition, of books being written in every generation and every century, going all the way back to biblical times, and we know exactly who we are, and we even have lists of teacher to student, of rabbis, teacher to student, an unbroken chain going all the way back to biblical times. So whenever I hear this claim, and I hear this claim periodically, I always say to people, I tell them this, and you can even look up on the internet and find these lists. And I say, okay, so tell me, where does the lie begin? Because if the Jewish people today are the same as the Jewish people, let's say, of 200 years ago, which no one would deny, and the Jewish people of 200 years ago are the same as the Jewish people of 400 years ago or 500 years ago, and on it goes, because I could show you books from every one of these time periods. So there's this, but these misconceptions run deep. We were talking before we went into the studio, and you mentioned that there's idea out there that Jesus was a Palestinian. And I've heard this one too. Can you talk about that, where it comes from and what's wrong with it?
It comes from Palestinian Christian theology. There are Palestinian theologians, Christian theologians, who propagate this. They take replacement theology one step further. And they say that the Palestinian people are the indigenous people of the land. For one thing, the Palestinian people is a made up name,
Another topic I've dealt with on my show.
But I hate using the term because it gives legitimacy to the term when it's not accurate. So I at least need to say, there needs to be a disclaimer here, it's not an accurate term. But the world knows them as the Palestinian people. The Palestinian theologians claim that they are the indigenous people of the land. The Jews were not here. One of these theologians, Mitri Raheb, who was the former pastor of the Bethlehem Church in Bethlehem, he, in 2010, speaking at a Christ at the Checkpoint conference, he said if you compare his DNA to Bibi Netanyahu, there would be no match. But if you compare his DNA to Jesus, who was born in Bethlehem, there would be a match. So he's claiming that the Jews who are here now only came here a couple hundred years ago. So the logical conclusion from that teaching, which is completely erroneous, it's completely non-biblical, they're rewriting the Bible, but the conclusion is, well, if there were no Jews here 2,000 years ago, Jesus can't be Jewish. He's Palestinian. So they're not only delegitimizing the Jewish people, delegitimizing the existence of Israel, but they are deconstructing the Christian faith. And many Christians do not understand that. Too many Christians are biblically illiterate, and they're not understanding how their faith is being deconstructed for the purpose of demonizing Israel.
I mean, it's a strange assertion also because the people who call themselves the Palestinians today are Arab peoples.
Yes.
In fact, the charter of the Palestinian Liberation Organization of Yasser Arafat, the original, and that was the term Palestinian for this group of people only started being used in the 1950s.
Yes.
But in the opening paragraph of their charter, it says that they are part of the Arab nation.
That's right.
So there's kind of like this built-in contradiction there,
right.
That
well, the whole thing is based on lies, and lies tend to contradict themselves. You can't keep a straight narrative going when it's based on lies. And they don't want to be confused with the facts, with the biblical facts, with historical facts, with any facts.
Okay, Tricia, we have 2 minutes left. Give me one more lie you're encountering.
That is, I think that's the most important to focus on. And I want Christians to understand that they need to be biblically literate, that they need to focus, they need to read the Bible, they need to know what the Bible actually says. They need to understand that the Bible says Israel is the apple of God's eye. The Jewish people are the apple of God's eye. And Christians, if you are opposing the Jewish people or opposing Israel, you're opposing God. That's what it boils down to. And I just want to make an appeal to all Christians out there to come to Israel, stand in support of Israel. I'm here. It's safe. Whatever you see in the media, you cannot trust what's in the media. Come to Israel, stand with the Jewish people.
Dr. Miller, could you please tell our viewers how they could follow your work, how they could find your writings, how they could follow what CAMRA is doing? Because again, CAMRA, as its name stands for, is really fighting the battle for accuracy in Middle East reporting. There's so many lies being told about what's going on in the Middle East, and CAMRA's entire mission is to combat that. So please tell everyone where they could find CAMRA's work, where they could find your work.
Okay. CAMRA's website is CAMRA. It's www.camra.org. You can reach me by email, Tricia, Tricia, @camra.org. And I recommend you going to the CAMRA website. It's a phenomenal source of information. Most recent article on the top, as you page down, it just keeps going, but you can search by topic. You can find anything you want that's happened in relation to Israel for the last 40 years.
Yeah, I always say that the story of Israel and its conflict with its enemies currently is one topic that if you know very little about it, you'll believe the other side.
Right.
And the more you know about it, the more you understand the justice of Israel's position. It really requires educating yourself. And I think what we're seeing with so much anti-Israel sentiment is really built on a lot of ignorance. So thank you for doing the work that you do. And thank you for being with us in the studio. And thank you for visiting Israel at a time of war.
Thank you.
Dr. Tricia Miller joining us in the studio. We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel right after this.